Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya 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 Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai, reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Translations and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityaname Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashachadesh Tarne. We are reading from the Adi-lila, chapter 7, Lord Chaitanya and 5 features. Starting from what is it? 103? Okay, 103. So what's happening is the Mayavadis. Oh, yeah. So now Lord Chaitanya said his piece. He explained what his spiritual master told him. And then the Mayavadis had a change of heart, change of mind. And they admit that love of God is a very good thing. And they don't have any objection to him being a devotee of Krishna. But they're still wondering why he doesn't study the Vedanta. So then what did Lord Chaitanya say?
Vedanta is the back. Like we should know Vedanta also. Bhakti Yoga develops on the basis of Vedanta philosophy.
Yeah, so he's starting off agreeing with them. He's like, yes, we need to know the knowledge of Vedanta. And he quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam, right? That devotional service has to be done in terms of what they have heard from Vedanta Shruti. This is right there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then, text 103. Iha shuni bale sarva sanyasi ragana tomake dekiya yaiche sakshat narayana. Hearing this, the Mayavadi sannyasis became somewhat humble and addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayan himself, who they all agreed he was. They were impressed that he was quoting Srimad Bhagavatam. Mayavadi sannyasis address each other as Narayan. Whenever they see another sannyasi, they offer him respect by calling Om Namo Narayanaya. I offer my respect unto you, Narayan. Although they know perfectly well what kind of Narayan he is. Narayan has 4 hands, but although they are puffed up with the idea of being Narayan, they cannot exhibit more than 2. Since their philosophy declares that Narayan and an ordinary human being are on the same level, they sometimes use the word Daridra Narayan, the poor Narayan, which was invented by a so-called Swami who did not know anything about Vedanta philosophy. Therefore, although all those Mayavadi sannyasis who call themselves Narayan were actually unaware of the position of Narayan, due to their austerities, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enabled them to understand him to be Narayan himself. Lord Chaitanya is certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan, appearing as a devotee of Narayan. And thus the Mayavadi sannyasis, understanding that he was directly Narayan himself, whereas they were false, puffed up Narayans, spoke to him as follows. So they generally call each other Narayan, and then they called Lord Chaitanya Narayan, but they got it right that time because he actually is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when they saw what kind of a personality Lord Chaitanya was, they understood there was a big difference between him and them. You got my bag there? And then they understood that he was the real Narayan and they were just fake Narayans, basically. They were just wannabe Narayans. Wanting to be, but not able to ever be. Text 104. Tomara vachana shuni judaya shravana. Tomara madhuri deki judaya nayana.
Dear Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, to tell you the truth, we are greatly pleased to hear your words. And furthermore, your bodily features are so pleasing that we feel extraordinary satisfaction in seeing you. Purport. In the Shastras, it is said, Ata Shri Krishna Namadina nabhavet grahayam indriya sevonmukhe hi jivudau shyama eva spurti adha. With one's materially contaminated senses, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or His name, form, qualities, or paraphernalia. But if one renders service unto Him, the Lord reveals Himself. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1 2 234. Here one can see the effect of the Mayavadi sannyasis' service towards Narayan. Because the Mayavadis offered a little respect to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and because they were pious and actually followed the austere rules and regulations of sannyas, they had some understanding of Vedanta philosophy. And by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they could appreciate that he was none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is endowed with all six opulences. One of these opulences is his beauty. By his extraordinarily beautiful bodily features, the Mayavadi sannyasis recognized Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Narayan himself. He was not a Pars- par- Parsical Narayan like the Daridra Narayans invented by so-called sannyasis.
You have Daridya. How can Narayan be Daridya?
Daridra. It's
How
so
can
bad.
it be poor? It's supposed to be Bhagavan because that's real Paul. Anyways, yeah, but Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. And Prabhupada mentioned this purport and also the previous one that due to their austerities of trying to study the Vedic scriptures, trying to live a spiritual life, observing celibacy and really trying to, know Brahman and approach the Lord in some sense, even if it's impersonal, misguided, and bogus, but at least they're trying, right? And maybe the only way they know or the way that they think is best. So because of that, then Lord Chaitanya reciprocated with them by enabling them to appreciate that he is the Supreme Lord. 105. Tomara prabhave sabara anandita mana kabu asangata nahi tomara vachana. Would you like to read, Rich?
Yes, Prabhupada Priya, Hare Krishna. One moment, please.
Okay.
Dear sir, by your influence, our minds are greatly satisfied, and we believe that your words will never be unreasonable. Therefore, you may speak on the Vedanta Sutra. Purport. In this verse, the words Tomara Prabhave, your influence, are very important. Unless one is spiritually advanced, he cannot influence an audience. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula. Unless one associates with the pure devotee, he cannot be influenced to understand devotional service. These Mayavadi sannyasis were fortunate enough to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a devotee, and certainly they were greatly influenced by the Lord. They knew that since a perfectly advanced spiritualist never says anything false, all his words are reasonable and agree with the Vedic version. A highly realized person never says anything that has no meaning. Mayavadi philosophers claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this has no meaning. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never uttered such nonsense. The Mayavadi sannyasis were convinced about his personality, and therefore they wanted to hear the purport of Vedanta philosophy from him.
Yeah, so these Mayavadis, you can see they're sincere, right? They're open-minded. And even though there's always some disagreement between the Mayavadis and the Vaishnavas, but when they saw the character of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they saw his humility, they saw his sweetness, saw his effulgence, they heard his words, his wise words. Yeah, then they could understand that this is a genuine person. This person really has knowledge, is very reasonable, is very intelligent, is very empowered and powerful. And so they got some faith, right? Like the happiness and the satisfaction that they were hearing in their minds, that they were feeling in their minds after hearing him speak was, it was like a visceral experience of purity, of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's purity. So they thought, this is a genuine, pure person. This person is the real deal, right? He really knows, and we can learn something from him. So they're inviting him, please speak. We want to hear from you. So this is very nice. Text 106. Prabhu kahe Vedanta Sutra Ishvara Vachana Vyasarupe Kailayaha Sri Narayana. Are you reading today, Hannah?
Yes.
This is a long one, so if you want, you can break it up.
Sure, just tell me when to stop. Okay.
Or you can read the whole thing if you want to. It's up to you.
Yeah. The Lord said, Vedanta philosophy consists of words spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana in the form of Vyasadeva. Wow. Purport. The Vedanta Sutra, which consists of aphorisms revealing the method of understanding Vedic knowledge, is the concise form of all Vedic knowledge. It begins with the words Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now is the time to inquire about the absolute truth. The human form of life is especially meant for this purpose, and therefore the Vedanta Sutra very concisely explains the human mission. This is confirmed by the words of Vayu in the Skanda Puranas, which define a sutra as follows. Can I skip it?
You can skip, yeah.
A sutra is a compilation of aphorisms that express the essence of all knowledge in a minimum of words. It must be universally applicable and faultless in its linguistic presentation. Anyone familiar with such sutras must be aware of the Vedanta Sutra, which is well known among scholars by the following additional names: Brahma Sutra, Sariraka, Vyasa Sutra, Badarayana Sutra, Uttara Mimamsa, and Vedanta Darshana. There are 4 chapters, adhyayas, in the Vedanta Sutra, and there are 4 divisions, padas, in each chapter. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra may be referred to as Sodasha Pada, or 16 divisions of aphorisms. The theme of each and every division is fully described in terms of 5 different subject matters, adhikaranas, which are technically called pratikya, hetu, udarana, apanaya, and nigamana. Every theme must necessarily be explained with reference to pratigya, or a solemn declaration of the purpose of the treatise. The solemn declaration given in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, which indicates that this book was written with a solemn declaration to inquire about the absolute truth. Similarly, reasons must be expressed, hetu, examples must be given in terms of various facts, udarana, the theme must be gradually brought nearer for understanding, upanaya, and finally, it must be supported by authoritative quotations from the Vedic sutras, nigamana. According to the great dictionary compiler Hemachandra, known as Koshakara, Vedanta refers to the purport of the Upanishads in the Brahmana portion of the Vedas. Professor Apt in his dictionary describes the Brahmana portion of the Vedas as that portion which states the rules for employment of hymns at various sacrifices and gives detailed explanations of their origin, sometimes with lengthy illustrations in the form of legends and stories. It is distinct from the mantra portion of the Vedas. Hemachandra says that the supplement of the Vedas is called the Vedanta Sutra. Veda means knowledge and Anta means the end. In other words, proper understanding of the ultimate purport of the Vedas is called Vedanta knowledge. Such knowledge as given in aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra must be supported by the Upanishads. According to learned scholars, there are 3 different sources of knowledge, which are called Prasthanatraya. According to these scholars, Vedanta is one of such sources, for it presents Vedic knowledge on the basis of logic and sound argument. Bhagavad Gita 13.5, the Lord says, Brahma Sutra Padais Chaiva Hetu Madbir Vinishchitaiha. Understanding of the ultimate goal of life is ascertained in the Brahma Sutra by legitimate logic and argument concerning cause and effect. Therefore, the Vedanta Sutra is known as the Nyaya Prasthana. The Upanishads are known as Shruti Prasthana, and the Gita, Mahabharata, and Puranas are known as Smriti Prasthana. All scientific knowledge of transcendence must be supported by Shruti, Smriti, and a sound logical basis. It is said that both the Vedic knowledge and the supplement of the Vedas, called the Satvata Pancharatra, emanated from the breathing of Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedanta Sutra aphorisms were compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, a powerful incarnation of Sri Narayan, although it is sometimes said that they were compiled by a great sage named Apantaratma. The Pankaratra and Vedanta Sutra, however, express the same opinions. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore confirms that there is no difference in opinion between the two, and he declares that because the Vedanta Sutra was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, it may be understood to have emanated from the breathing of Sri Narayana. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that while Vyasadeva was compiling the Vedanta Sutra, 7 of his great saintly contemporaries were also engaged in similar work. These saints were Atreya Rishi, Asmaratya, Audalomi, Karshanagini, Kasa Krishna. Oh, Krishna. It's not fun.
You're doing well.
Guys, this is the second time this has happened to me. Okay, all those great sages died. In addition, it is also stated that the Parashari and Karmandi Bhikshu also discussed the Vedanta Sutra aphorisms before Vyasadeva. As mentioned above, the Vedanta Sutra consists of 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters discuss the relationship of the living entity with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is known as Sambandha Jnana, or knowledge of the relationship. The 3rd chapter describes how one can act in his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Abhideya Jnana. The relationship of the living entity with the Supreme Lord is described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Swarupaya Krishnera Nityadasa. The living entity is an eternal servant of Krishna, the Supreme God. Madhya 2108. Therefore, to act in that relationship, one must perform sadhana bhakti, or the prescribed duties of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Abhideya Jnana. The 4th chapter describes the result of such devotional service, Prayojana Jnana. This ultimate goal of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. The words Anavriti Sabdat in the Vedanta Sutra indicate this ultimate goal. Srila Vyasadeva, a powerful incarnation of Narayana, compiled the Vedanta Sutra, and in order to protect it from unauthorized commentaries, he personally composed Srimad Bhagavatam on the instructions of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, as the original commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Besides Srimad Bhagavatam, there are commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra composed by all major Vaishnavacharyas, and each of them, devotional service to the Lord, is described very explicitly. Only those who follow Shankara's commentary have described the Vedanta Sutra in an impersonal way, without reference to Vishnu Bhakti, or devotional service to the Lord Vishnu. Generally, people very much appreciate this Sariraka Bhashya, or impersonal description of the Vedanta Sutra. But all commentaries that are devoid of devotional service to Lord Vishnu must be considered to differ in purport from the original Vedanta Sutra. In other words, Lord Caitanya definitely confirmed that the commentaries or bhashyas written by the Vaishnavacharyas on the basis of devotional service to Lord Vishnu, and not the Sariraka Bhashya of Sankaracharya, give the actual explanation of the Vedanta Sutra. Whew, I did it.
Oh, that was a workout. Good job, Hannah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so Lord Chaitanya is saying that Vedanta philosophy was spoken by Lord Narayan in the form of Vyasadeva, who's a literary incarnation of God, and he compiled the Vedanta Sutra. So this sutra, as it says here, he gives a definition of sutra. A sutra is a compilation of aphorisms which expresses the essence of all knowledge in a minimum of words. So they're very short, right? The word sutra means thread. So thread is very, very thin. So it's just, or let's say you have a garland or a necklace or something, it's strung on a thread. So if you take off everything else, all the fluff and all the frill and all the, prettiness and that, what's left? The thread. The thread is like the essence. So that's what the Vedanta Sutras are. Each sutra is a verse, an aphorism, which is bare minimum, very concise, And another thing about these sutras is, he says it must be universally applicable. So there's nothing here there's nothing in the Vedanta Sutras which is, applies only to some people at some places at some times. Everything is universal, transcontextual, and eternal truths. So that's why scholars really like the Vedanta Sutra, because it's something that you can really just, you can hold fast to, like, this is the truth and nothing but the truth, right? And it applies to everyone at all places at all times. So these, spiritual scholars, they feel like if you're not familiar and conversant with Vedanta Sutra, then like you don't have a backbone to your spiritual life, basically. And that's why they're criticizing Lord Caitanya. Why don't you study Vedanta Sutra? So the difficulty with Vedanta Sutra is because it is so compact, it needs to be explained, right? It's just the thread, right? If you just see the thread, then you're like, okay, where are we going with this? Are we making a necklace? Are we making a garland? Are we making, are we going to weave a cloth? Are we going to make a gamsha or a sari? Or what are we doing with this thread? Right. So there'll be a statement, but it needs to be unpacked. And because it's so concise, it's difficult to understand exactly what the specific meaning was intended to be, right? Or how to apply it, right? Because that's not given. How to apply it in time, place, and circumstances. So then all these Vaishnava scholars, they write their own commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra. And so Prabhupada is saying that there are 12 commentaries, and 11 of them are all like pointing to Vishnu Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti. And there's only one, which is Sharirika Bhasya, which is Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra, which is impersonalist or Mayavadi commentary. And so, but unfortunately, a lot of people are really attracted to Shankaracharya's commentary. And so that's how you end up with Mayavadi sannyasis who, feel like they have a Shastric basis for their philosophy because it's based on Shankaracharya's Vedanta Sutra. So they read that one and it supports their beliefs. And that's why actually one time I got in a huge argument with my guru about this. I got like a big argument with Hridayananda Maharaj about this because I was making a point and he was saying like, what is the Shastric basis for that? And I said, well, it's all over. I said that, in Srila Prabhupada's purport. And he said, no, what is the Shastra? You need to tell me the Shastra. And I was like, I just said from Prabhupada's purport. He's like, no, tell me the Shastra. And I was like, well, isn't Prabhupada's purport Shastra? He said, it's a commentary. And then I was like, but wait a minute. Like we take Prabhupada, like the purports of Prabhupada to be like as good as, the actual verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he said, well, there are other groups that take the purports of the commentaries of their, acharyas to be as good as Srimad Bhagavatam, but the problem is that they're wrong. So, we're lucky that ours are correct, because Prabhupada gave it as it is, as Shastra intended it, as the Lord intended it. But if we're going to cite commentaries as like the philosophical basis for our statements, then we're opening it up for other people to quote their acharyas' commentaries, which may not be true. So we really need to quote Shastra. And then the other thing is that not every, basically ISKCON devotees are going to accept Prabhupada's purports, but then it's like preaching to the choir. So if you're really going to preach in broader circles, right, like to scholars or philosophers or people from other sampradayas, it's like you can't quote Prabhupada's purports, unless they accept Prabhupada as an authority, which maybe some do. But, you're going to be a lot safer with quoting Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ishopanishad, things like that, right? So we got in a big fight about it. He was like yelling at me. I was yelling back, Prabhupada.
That's why you're Prabhupada Priya.
It was actually like really intense. He was like raising his voice and leaning forward, and I was also raising my voice. And there was a girl there that was sitting next to us, and she got so scared she like left the room and ran into the kitchen, closed the door. And then later, like, what happened to you? She's like, I thought you guys were going to start hitting each other. It wasn't that bad. I can see how
Can
she
you
might
invite
think
me
it.
over next time when that happens?
He still remembers that. He's like, remember when we had that fight, Prabhupada Priya? That was good. He's like. So anyways, yeah, so the conclusion was that, yeah, we need to really understand the Shastra. So anyways, and that's why sometimes some sampradayas don't accept Srimad Bhagavatam because it's commentary. Right? But the thing is that because it's Vyasadev's commentary, it's the author's commentary on his own work. So that's why Srimad Bhagavatam is exceptional as a commentary, because obviously, the author knows what he meant, right? So when an author comments on their own book, it's almost like an extension of the same book. Right? It's just an explanation of the same book, the same meaning that they intended. So we study Srimad Bhagavatam, and yeah.
How is Bhagavatam the commentary? Because they are actually saying the real past tense of Krishna, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess, I've never read the Vedanta Sutra because Prabhupada says we don't need to, we can just read Srimad Bhagavatam. But apparently there's some verses in Vedanta Sutra which must hint at the pastimes, and then it gets unpacked in Srimad Bhagavatam. So something else that struck me here is that Prabhupada is going through, he's saying that Vedanta Sutra is divided into 4 parts, and each part has a structure. And this reminded me of, some of us attended to Keshava Swami's talk over the weekend, in which he was talking about how he structures his classes, like how he prepares his classes, that he starts with something and then he include this, that, and the other. And it reminded me of that because it says each theme. So let's see. Yeah, so each section, okay, so there are 4 chapters, and each is divided into, 16 divisions. 16 divisions of aphorism, and each of these divisions has a theme. And then for each one of those themes, there has to be 5 parts. So it's structured like this, that there's the pratigya, there's the declaration of the purpose of the treatise. So this is the purpose of my presentation. This is the main point that I'm trying to make here. And then, yeah, so the purpose, the first purpose, statement of purpose is the first verse of the Vedanta Sutra, which is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. That now is the time to inquire about the absolute truth. So this is the purpose of this. And then after that, the next thing is reasons. Yeah, hetu. Hetu means causes or reasons. So this is the purpose, and this is the reason why this purpose is important. Or like if you're going to be writing something, it's like, this is what I'm presenting, and this is why it's important for you to know this, right? The reason. So that's the hetu, cause. And then udaharana, there have to be some facts. Yeah, examples must be given in terms of various facts. So facts backing up your statement of purpose, your solemn declaration of purpose, and then examples that bring those facts to light, or to life. And then the 4th thing is upanaya. So upanaya means that the theme has to be brought nearer for understanding. So this is explaining, maybe making it relevant, right? Bringing it nearer, bringing it close to home by bringing some showing the relevance of it to our practical day-to-day lives. And then it has to be supported by authoritative quotations from the Vedas, from Nigamana. So then it has to be backed up by Shastra from the actual Vedas, like the 4 Vedas. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it reminded me of what Keshava Swami was saying, because he had the different parts, right? It's like he starts with his topic, and then, maybe he makes it relevant to people, and then he quotes some academic authority, or he quotes some statistical facts, some statistical, like, factual evidence that people accept from their, that's in line with their ontology or whatever, they're like, accept what's acceptable for them as an authority. And then yeah, and then he brings in some examples, maybe some personal experience. I can't remember all the things, maybe you guys remember, but you know, he had like, there were certain things that you bring in this, and it makes a very strong presentation that people can, they accept, they understand the importance of, they're attentive to, it's relatable, you know, it's, and then they go away thinking, oh, it's really good. So yeah, Srila Vyasadeva thought about this, how to present. I thought that was pretty cool. So we have to, like Vyasadeva, we have to be excellent presenters. We have to really know how to present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in a way that, you know, makes solid points, that people understand the importance of what we're saying, they relate to it, that they understand it, that it's relevant to their life, that is authoritative. So all those things. Okay, Jai. Let's go on to text 107. Brahma pramada vipralipsa karana patava ishvarera vakyena hi dosha e saba. We got there, Nikesh.
The material defects of mistakes, illusions, cheating, and sensory inefficiency do not exist in the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. A mistake is the acceptance of an object to be different from what it is, or the acceptance of false knowledge. For example, one may see a rope in the dark and think it to be a serpent, or one may see a glittering oyster shell and think it to be gold. These are mistakes. Similarly, an illusion is a misunderstanding that arises from inattention while hearing, and cheating is the transmission of such defective knowledge to others. Materialistic scientists and philosophers generally use such words as maybe and perhaps, because they do not have actual knowledge of complete facts. Therefore, their instructing others is an example of cheating. The final defect of the materialistic people is his inefficient senses. Although our eyes, for example, have the power to see, they cannot see that which is situated at a distance, nor can they see the eyelid, which is the object nearest to the eye. To our untrained eyes, the sun appears to be just like a plate, and to the eyes of one who is suffering from jaundice, everything appears to be yellow. Therefore, we cannot rely on the knowledge acquired through such imperfect eyes. The ears are equally imperfect. We cannot hear a sound vibrated a long distance away unless we put a telephone to our ear. Similarly, if we analyze all our senses in this way, we will find that all to be imperfect. Therefore, it is useless to acquire knowledge through the senses. The Vedic process is to hear from authority. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.2, the Lord says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsyo vidu. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. We have to hear not from a telephone, but from an authorized person, for it is he who has real knowledge.
Right, so don't hear it from your phone, hear it from an authorized person. I feel like that applies even more today than it did back in the, whatever the time when Prabhupada wrote this purport. Yeah, so this is good. We always hear about these four defects, right? The four defects of human beings. And this is Lord Chaitanya saying it. We're hearing it right from the Lord's mouth. So Brahma means the tendency to make mistakes. And what does he give? What's the example he gives for making a mistake? He gives a couple examples.
Thinking of rope as a snake.
Yeah, thinking of rope as a snake, or thinking a shell to be gold, oyster shell. And then the next one is pramada, which means illusion. What does he say illusion is? I thought this was interesting. Yeah.
Inattention while hearing.
Yeah, a misunderstanding that arises from inattention while hearing. So we're listening to a class and then we kind of like space out and then we go away thinking that speaker said something that they didn't say. We go away with a misunderstanding, and that is called illusion. Yeah.
Reading in Lila Nutta how these LSD hippies would come talk with Prabhupada,
Uh-huh.
and he would make a point and they wouldn't get it. He'd make it again and again because they were so illusioned by
Yeah.
drugs.
Yeah,
How
dulled
patient,
out,
yeah. But Prabhupada was so patient to try to help us.
right? Yeah. And then vipralipsa, cheating propensity. Even sounds like cheating. Slippery. Slippery. So cheating propensity, he says the transmission of such defective knowledge to others. So such, he was referring to the illusion. So first of all, you hear something wrong because you didn't pay attention, and then you go on and transmit that, misunderstanding to other people. And that way it's vipralipsa, cheating. So you have to be very careful to be attentive and make sure that we're hearing properly, understanding properly. And then the last one is imperfect senses. And then he gives a lot of examples of how our eyes don't see and our ears don't hear. Yeah. Okay, so that's why Vedic knowledge is so important, is because if we just rely on our own senses and minds for gathering knowledge about reality, then we're going to make a lot of mistakes and we're going to be illusioned, and then we're going to go on believing in some illusion and teaching other people the illusion, and then we remain very far from the reality. So the truth can be known from someone who doesn't make mistakes, who never falls into illusion, who has perfect senses, and who is totally free from any cheating propensity, and that is the Lord. So that's why we have to accept knowledge from the Lord, who is Apurusheya, who is not a human being, not an ordinary human being, beyond any human being. And then, and the disciplic succession, who are meant to be his pure representatives. Hannah.
Yeah, the telephone thing also reminded me of like what we were talking about yesterday with modern religions. Like people will hear things from word of mouth and then just like take it as truth without actually reading their scriptures. And we were talking about that's why it's important to like quote Shastra. And actually, when I heard the telephone thing, it also made me think like that's why your guru was arguing with you so much because not that he didn't think Prabhupada's words were authorized, but because that telephone thing is like active in other philosophies. And anyways, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I was thinking that's exactly, see the Vedanta Sutra. So Vedanta Sutra is Apurusheya, right? Because Srila Vyasadeva is the incarnation of the Lord. And yet even he quotes the Vedas. Even he quotes the Vedas and gives facts and gives examples. So text 108. Upanishad Sahita Sutra Kaheye Tattva Mukhya Vidya Se Artha Parama Mahatva. Oh, we should make Hannah read this purport. Actually, I think we'll skip the second part of this purport because it's a list of the 108 Upanishads.
I just scrolled down and I literally gasped.
Who wants to read? Prayushi, are you able to read?
Yes, I can read.
Go ahead.
The absolute truth is described in the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra, but one must understand the verses as they are. That is the supreme glory in understanding. Purport. It has been fashionable since the time of Shankaracharya to explain everything regarding the Shastras in an indirect way. Scholars take pride in explaining everything in their own way, and they declare that one can understand the Vedic scriptures in any way he likes. This any way you like method is foolishness, and this has created havoc in the Vedic culture. One cannot accept scientific knowledge in his own whimsical way. In the science of mathematics, for example, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and one cannot make it equal 3 or 5. Yet, although it is not possible to alter real knowledge, people have taken to the fashion of understanding Vedic knowledge in any way they like. It is for this reason that we have presented Bhagavad Gita as it is. We do not create meanings by concoctions. Sometimes commentators say that the word Kurukshetra in the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita refers to one's body, but we do not accept this. We understand that Kurukshetra is a place that still exists, and according to Vedic version, it is a Dharmakshetra or a place of pilgrimage. People still go there to perform Vedic sacrifices. Foolish commentators, however, say that Kurukshetra means the body and that Pandava refers to five senses. In this way, they distort the meaning and people are misled. Here, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms that all Vedic literatures, including the Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and others, where Shruti, Smriti, and Nyaya must be understood according to their original statements. To describe the direct meaning of the Vedic literatures is glorious, but to describe them in one's own way, using imperfect senses and imperfect knowledge, is a disastrous blunder. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fully deprecated the attempt to describe the Vedas in this way. Regarding,
You
we
can
we can
you can
skip
skip that part. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a list of the 108 Upanishads. So yeah, because he's mentioning that the Upanishads are a good evidence, right? But they need to be understood according to the original statements. And he says, by the way, the Upanishads are all of these ones. So yeah, he's making an interesting point here that's relevant to has to do with the authority of knowledge, because he's saying that in science, scientific knowledge or mathematical knowledge, you can't interpret it the way that you like. Like 2 + 2 is 4, and that's it. Like if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, I think 2 + 2 is 5," like he's just going to get thrown out of the mathematical conversation. Like this guy's a nut. Just get him out of here, right? So, but with Vedic knowledge, somehow or other, there's this culture. Like in India, it's a very inclusive and open. It's I mean, Brahminical culture. The nature of Brahmins is to be very open-minded and like we can discuss things. We discuss things, and then what they would do is if someone would come up with some new idea or some tangential idea, then they would debate. And then after winning the debate, the person with the deviant idea would have to accept we would have to forfeit his idea and accept the truth as it was presented by the person who defeated him. Right. And so that was the way that Brahmins would maintain the purity and the sanctity of Vedic knowledge, right? Is through this culture of debate. But then as Kali Yuga progresses, then people became so like puffed up and everything that even after being defeated, they would just still cling to their deviant deviant ideas and propagate them, right? Like big time Vipralipsa, just cheating people by presenting their their misunderstanding. So then we end up with a spiritual culture that's got 100 million different ideas, right, under the umbrella of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma or whatever you want to call it. So that's very confusing, and it makes people think, oh, well, these people are really just confused and don't know what they're talking about. There's no absolute truth. Some people say this person's God, some people say that person's God, some people say this is the practice, some people say no, this is. And it's like no. And so because it's so mixed up, then people are like, all right, well, at least 2 + 2 is 4. So let's just go with mathematics. So then they put their faith in science because religion is just too messy. Because people are, because of, everyone's got their own ideas. And one place Prabhupada kind of disparagingly says that, you don't you're not considered a Muni unless you have your own ideas, right? It's like even in philosophy, like for someone to get a PhD, you can't just expand on someone else's idea. You can't just like write a paper like really clarifying or representing something that's an idea that someone has already come up with. You have to come up with a new idea that's never been thought of before, that's never been, you know, out there in the cosmic ether before. Otherwise, like, you know, you don't get your PhD. So so it was kind of like that. And then that ends up just causing a lot of confusion. Whereas the absolute truth is actually very simple. You know, there's like dasa mula tattva. There's like 10 statements of universal truth, which apply to everyone. And, you know, they can be explained, but that's it. You know, it's like the absolute truth is pretty simple. It can be said in 10 sentences. Yeah.
How do devotee scholars reconcile that? Like Hridayananda Goswami, Small Krishna Goswami, Krishna Kshetra Swami, these devotees, Radhika Raman Prabhu, they go back, they go for higher education, and then they achieve, you know, they get a PhD. How do they reconcile that, like part of the academic world, the push for like innovation, I guess, at the expense of tradition, presenting things traditionally?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that Hridayananda Maharaj wrote his PhD, right? And he was studying, and then said, "Oh, and it got published in some like Harvard journal after, you know, maybe like several years after he graduated." But then I was like, "Oh, what was your PhD about?" And he's like, "I don't recommend reading it." He's like, "It's just something that I had to do to get my PhD." Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I know that Radhika Raman did something related to Jiva Goswami, isn't it?
That's on purpose.
Something related to that,
Just
yeah.
one part of one of the 6.
Yeah, and then
One
he
chapter, yeah.
he kind of like expanded on it in maybe some new way that shed new light on the point or something. Yeah. So, but also it's not like that's a published book in ISKCON that we read either, you know. So what you have to do to get a PhD is something above and beyond the Vedic culture. So, unfortunately, but yeah, so these Mayavadi sannyasis are like, you need to study the Vedanta Sutra. And he said, and Lord Chaitanya is saying, yes, Vedanta Sutra is important. It's the backbone of knowledge. It, you know, but the point he's making, but it's spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he says, Upanishad Sahita Sutra Kahi Ye Tattva. It has to be presented in tattva. It has to be presented as it is, basically. Right? We must understand the verses as they are. That is the glory, supreme glory in understanding. This is where Prabhupada got his Bhagavad Gita as it is concept from Lord Chaitanya, who says that these scriptures need to be presented ye tattva, which means in their thatness, you know, exactly as they are. Okay, text 109. That's funny because it's text 108 and it's got the 108 Upanishads. I wonder if that inspired Prabhupada. Text 108 and 108 Upanishads. Text 109. Gona Vritya Yeva Bhasya Karila Acharya Tara Shavane Nashahaya Sarva Karya. Sneha, are you reading?
Yeah, Prabhupada Priya. Shripad Shankaracharya had described all the Vedic literatures in terms of indirect meanings. One who hears such explanations is ruined.
Yeah, so he's saying that Shankaracharya did not explain them in tattva. He gave indirect meanings. So word here, yeah, gona vritye. Oh, the next one has a really long purport. Tanhara nahika dosha ishara agyapana gonarta karila mukhya arta achadiya. Shankaracharya is not at fault, for it is under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that he has covered the real purpose of the Vedas. Remember we were talking about this? That's part of the Lord's plan to kind of bring people back to the Vedas, but to do so in an impersonal way so that he could catch the Buddhists who are impersonalists. That's kind of like a bridge book. Right? Shankaracharya's commentary is a bridge book for the Vedas, for the Buddhists, to bring them back under the Vedic tree of knowledge. Purport. The Vedic literature is to be considered a source of real knowledge, but if one does not take it as it is, one will be misled. For example, the Bhagavad Gita is an important Vedic literature that has been taught for many years, but because it was commented upon by unscrupulous rascals, people derived no benefit from it, and no one came to the conclusion of Krishna consciousness. Since the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is now being presented as it is, however, within 4 or 5 short years, thousands of people all over the world have become Krishna conscious. That is the difference between direct and indirect explanations of the Vedic literature. Therefore, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, Mukhya Vritye Se Artha Parama Mahatva. To teach the Vedic literature according to its direct meaning, without false commentary, is glorious. Unfortunately, Sri Shankaracharya, by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, compromised between atheism and theism in order to cheat the atheists and bring them to theism. And to do so, he gave up the direct method of Vedic knowledge and tried to present a meaning which is indirect. It is with this purpose that he wrote the Sharirika Bhasya commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. One should not, therefore, attribute very much importance to the Sharirika Bhasya. In order to understand the Vedanta philosophy, one must study Srimad Bhagavatam, which begins with the words Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadhyasya Yatonvaya Vitaratas Charteshva Vigya Swarat. I offer my obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, who is the supreme, all-pervading personality of Godhead. I meditate upon him, the transcendent reality, who is the primeval cause of all causes, from whom all manifested universes arise, in whom they dwell, and by whom they are destroyed. I meditate upon that eternally effulgent Lord, who is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and yet is fully independent. Bhagavatam 111. Srimad Bhagavatam is the real commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Unfortunately, if one is attracted to Sri Shankaracharya's commentary, Sharirika Bhasya, his spiritual life is doomed. So yeah, like a bridge book. Sometimes devotees write bridge books, that are meant for, or they do bridge preaching or bridge kirtan or bridge whatever, all kinds of bridge stuff. So the problem with the bridge stuff is like it's meant for a particular group and it's meant to attract that group across the bridge, right? But if you're already on this side of the bridge, then that bridge book, that bridge whatever, can lead you back onto the other side of the bridge. So that's what happens. Like if a Vaishnava reads Shankaracharya's commentary, then he could become become an impersonalist. So we have to be careful with bridges that we're going in the right direction. Otherwise, our spiritual life could be doomed. One may argue that since Shankaracharya is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, how is it that he cheated people in this way? The answer is that he did so on the order of his master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Padma Purana in the words of Lord Shiva himself, who said, the Mayavadi philosophy, Lord Shiva informed his wife Parvati, is impious, asat shastra. It is covered Buddhism. My dear Parvati, in Kali Yuga, I assume the form of a Brahmin and teach this imagined Mayavad philosophy. In order to cheat the atheists, I describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be without form and without qualities. Similarly, in explaining Vedanta, I describe the same Mayavadi philosophy in order to mislead the entire population toward atheism by denying the personal form of the Lord. In the Shiva Purana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead told Lord Shiva, in Kali Yuga, mislead the people in general by propounding imaginary meanings for the Vedas to bewilder them. These are the descriptions of the Puranas. So it looks like he did it for 2 purposes. One is to get the Buddhists to come back to the Vedas, and the other is to keep the atheists in ignorance. Because the thing is, like, that's one of the purposes of the material world, right? Is to give people a chance to try to enjoy themselves and try to control everybody else, and without Krishna. Right, to forget about Krishna and to think that they are the center of the universe and think that they are God. So then Krishna has to allow for that, right? He has to, and so he allows for that. He facilitates that to the extent that he sends Lord Shiva down here to write a scripture that will enable them to think themselves spiritual in such a way as to reinforce their material illusion. Wow. Right? So be careful. Even Krishna is sending people to perpetuate the illusion because people want it, right? Krishna doesn't interfere with our free will. So if he was only giving like genuine Shastra, if everywhere you turned around there was a devotee on the street corner giving you Bhagavad Gita as it is, you wouldn't have a chance, right? If there was like a Harinam party everywhere, chanting the holy names and, you know, offering your food and giving it to you, you know, in every restaurant and every school cafeteria. And, you know, it's like, it would almost be like a disruption of your free will, right? So Krishna has to facilitate people's free expression of their will. And he does it. This is one of the ways that he does it. Another way is that he makes sure there are always enough demons in the world to mislead the other people who are asuram bhavam ashrita, right? Asuram bhavam ashrita means they take shelter of the mood of the demons. So they're kind of like doing Raganuga Bhakti, following the footsteps of the demons. So taking shelter of the demons. Yeah, asura bhav. So if there are no demons, then how are you gonna know how to be a good demon? You know, so there have to be demons in the world so that people who have a demonic mentality can take shelter of demons and basically do their
Shelter of
come out
demons.
demons. Yeah, because when the demigods, after drinking the Soma Rasa, after the churning of the ocean, they were like killing the demons left, right, and center. And Lord Brahma was like, stop, you're going to kill all the demons. You can't kill all the demons. You have to keep some demons. It's the material world after all. And at that time, I was doing Bhakti Vedanta, and I was like, why does Lord Brahma want there to be demons in the material world? And he's like, otherwise it wouldn't be the material world. Otherwise it would be Vaikuntha. So the whole point is that people want to experience this. They want to live like this. They want to be misled. They want to be cheated. They want to be demons. So here we are. So, but it's good. It means that, you know, there are a lot of different choices we can make. So there are a lot of options. So we have to be careful because, we can choose to be demonic or we can choose to be divine. And that's why Krishna in 16th chapter, he outlines it very clearly. These are the demoniac qualities. These are the divine qualities. You know, his recommendation is, you know, you should try to have the divine qualities. Try to get purified, get rid of the demoniac qualities. Follow the real Shastras. Okay. 5 o'clock. So we're going to stop there. And we're going to pick up this purport tomorrow, where it starts here with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments. Okay. Shri Caitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.